All right, Shalom Israel, Shalom, Shalom. This is Brother Warriala, and this is my channel, Rise of Israel. Salakia. First and foremost, I would like to give all honor and glory unto the Most High God Yahweh, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Again, Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Father, who the world will call God, Jehovah, Yahweh, but we call Him Yahweh. And His only begotten Son, who the world will call Jesus Christ. Many people call Him Yeshua, Joshua, but his real name is Yahweh Shai in the Paleo Hebrew, right? Or at least that's what we call him. This is a relatively brief video, as you can see by the title, going into, medieval and biblical proof that shows that Esau would be the so-called white man, right? Now, this is not some in-depth doctrinal teaching on Esau. Of course, we see according to the scriptures the so-called white man is Esau without a shadow of a doubt, but we're going to look into, today at least, we're going to look into historic proof that the so-called white man would be Esau according to the scriptures, right? Just showing you how unbiased of a thought process this is, or a belief system this is. Just so you can see that, although the Israelites make this claim the strongest, this claim has been here before the Great Awakening ever happened, and before anybody in the Americas was, at least in large amounts, calling themselves Israelites according to the scriptures, right? And professing themselves to be the Israelites, at the same time professing the so-called white man as being Esau, which is still relatively new, because most Israelites, for a long period of time, most Israelites in the Americas called the so-called white man Japheth, right? So the concept of even Esau being looked at as the so-called white man is still also a relatively new concept that's being pushed out by the Israelite community. But nonetheless, this is proof showing that we weren't the first, and we for sure aren't the last to understand Esau as being the so-called white man, right? So we're going to start off with a book by the title of The Rise of Christendom by Edwin E. Johnson. This book was published in 1890. Now, Edwin Johnson is a relatively controversial critic of early Christian history and the church tradition, meaning pretty much he was against a lot of things that the church did. And we're just going to pull maybe a few paragraphs about what he says, about the scriptures and how this relates to the topic at hand, right? So we're going to start off on page 290, the last paragraph of 290, right? And it says this: one of the most remarkable things in the Old Testament writings is the hints it gives, not only in the book of Esther, which was designed to explain and illustrate the festivity of Purim, a feast we must believe of purely medieval origin, but elsewhere of plots against the whole people of the synagogue to destroy them, right? So pretty much he's just explaining how he finds it extremely remarkable how that the Old Testament teachings hint towards other nations making plots to destroy the children of Israel, right? And as you can see by what he quotes, he's quoting a scripture that's very famously known to the Israelite community, right? And it says, "And in the violent and allegorical language which the rabbins habitually employ, there are symbolic words which sufficiently reveal their meaning," right? You see the quotation marks. They have said, "Come and let us cut them off from being a nation." Obviously, this is quoting Psalm 83. It says, "That the name of Israel might be no more in remembrance, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites," right? As we can see, and if we understand that chapter, We understand that it goes on a plethora of other nations that uh, have been confederate against the Israelites, right? So let's keep reading and see how far and see what he goes on to express, right? The next paragraph, it says, again, page 291, it says, now the medieval chroniclers say expressly that Edom means the Roman Empire. Mind you, this was written in 1890. Before many people say the Israelite community started to really grow in the Americas, right? It says the medieval chroniclers say effortlessly that Edom means the Roman Empire or the European powers. So not only does it explicitly say the Roman Empire, which we know to be the so-called white man, it doubles down and even emphasizes the European powers. Let's keep going. It is well known that the medieval rabbins take delight in employing a great number of synonyms drawn from the biblical chronicles and genealogies to express the same idea, right? So what is it saying? It is understood that the medieval rabbins, they take delight in employing a great number of synonyms drawn from the biblical chronicles and genealogy. So they love understanding and associating how ancient names and people that were known of old, how they directly relate to the people of modern times. And that's what the Israelites do. We see who the Edomites were of old, and we're connecting them to who they are today. So yeah, the name Edom might not be popular, but the name the Roman is popular, or the European powers. They, who knows a famous another name for the European powers today? NATO and the EU, right? So it's understood that NATO and the EU represent Edom, Esau, right? Let's keep going. We're going to jump down a little further, right? Okay. Let me see. We're going to jump to this, jump down a little further, right? It says, amidst the dense obscurities of the biblical books, one point at least is luminous. The Jews with the Mohammedans are children of Jacob or Israel. The Jews are not children of Ishmael. They honor the younger son of Abraham. Who's the younger son of Abraham? That's Isaac. But both branches of the stock regard Esau, Edom, i.e., the Greeks and Romans, as the elder brethren of the Israelites. So it tells you that modern, well, at least at that time, Arabs and Jews associated the Esau and Edom with the Greeks and the Romans. This is far more specific than this belief or this viewpoint that Esau means Rome because it's a spiritual thing or because it's a symbolic thing. No, this is being extremely specific. It's telling you that Esau and Edom is the Greek and Roman Empire, the Greeks and the Romans. That's what they tell it. Those are the Greeks and the Romans. Who are the Greeks and the Romans? These are the foundational. The Greeks and the Romans run the foundation of Western philosophy. They are that's the beginning of European expansion as we know it today, right? Let's see. It says one of the earliest is Benjamin Tudela of 1160, who calls Rome the Edomite capital and the Pope the head of the Edomitish religion. The book is of dubious date, right? So again, this is even in the 12th century AD. We see people calling Rome the capital of Edom and the Pope the head of the Edomitish religion, which is Christianity. So at one point in time, And if you just look at what Christianity has been, it's absolute folly. Absolute folly. As we know today, absolute folly. I mean, it's so much idolatry in the religion. It's so much excess and just absolute, absolute folly in the religion that we see today as Christianity, right? But this pretty much shows the point that Esau, Edom, are greatly tied to the Greeks, right? The earlier part of the catalog of nations in Genesis Genesis 10 is full of Greek and Latin names according to the explanation of the Jerusalem Targum, and there are more Greek and Latin words in biblical Hebrew in general than is commonly known. All right, so that's pretty much it with that. Let me see, make sure we watch this. Another example, right? It says, looking out from their humble meeting places. Now, this is page 303. It says, now, looking out from their humble meeting places, they encourage one another to believe that the tyranny of Edom, that is, the Europeans, is doomed. So, this book is from the 19th century. It's telling you that Edom are the Europeans. Simply plain and put. And here's what's so and there's so and we could really dive into this really deep, right? This is before anybody calls black and Hispanic people the Israelites. And there's a reason why this is so important. Because what does the scripture say about the last captivity of Israel, right? What does it tell us? Man, I could really go. I could really now we could really go into it, but we're just to be quick. This is Lamentations 4:21. It says, "Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked." We understand that this is the same judgment that happens to Babylon, but nonetheless, it says in the context that Edom is going to be judged, right? Verse 22, it says, "The punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion." So it's telling you that in the same context, Esau being judged, Jacob's punishment ends. So when Esau gets judged for all his wickedness, Jacob gets his punishment ends and his iniquity is accomplished, right? Look what it says next. "He will no more carry thee away into captivity." Talking about the Edomites, will no longer take the children of Israel into captivity. Showing you that the last captivity of Israel will be to the Edomites, right? Let's keep reading. "He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins," right? So we see that the Edomites have to be the Europeans, right? Salakia. Let me see if there's anything else we can grab. There's multiple accounts. There's other accounts, but we might just kind of cut it off at that part. Man, it's Obadiah. Let's also read this. Now, again, I don't agree everything with that they say in this, but we're gonna continue. It says, in his chronicles, again, this is the rise of Christendom. It says, in his chronicles, Esau and Edom constantly stands for the Roman Empire. In the medieval sense, Ashkenaz is Germany, which we understand that's true. Egyptians means the same with Edomites. The passage in Obadiah, in the light of this commentary, is simply a description of the Jews living in the midst of the Idumeans, right? The people of the province of the old Roman Empire. The Israelites dwell in Mount Esau, that is in old Roman territory, chiefly in Spain. Plainly, therefore, the cities of the Canaanites is simply symbolic for the cities of Israel's enemies, and the land in Canaan is constantly a symbol of idolatrous people. Don't know what he's explaining by that, but again, you get the point. Esau is heavily tied to the Roman Empire, heavily tied to the Roman Empire. Um, Let me see, make sure that's pretty much it with that. Okay. And now this is actually, now this actually is kind of interesting. Let me see. This actually is another point that I like right here. This is the Targum, and we're gonna get to the pull up the Targum next, but this is a page 322, and it says down at where I'm highlighting it, it says the Targum on the prophets from the 13th century is full of mourning over the temple in ruins. Rome is invaded against precisely as the prophets invade against Edom or Esau. Germany is identified with a name in Ezekiel 39, right? Here we have, in the words of E. Dutch, a mass history written under the censorship of Esau, Rome. It points out a large number of messianic passages, the Bible, which began to inspire the people not earlier than the 12th century. Now, we understand this is talking about, now I believe this is definitely saying Ezekiel 39, but we see that this is referring to Gog and Magog and the destruction of the pretty much the revised Roman Empire, right? And this goes into it, but we're not in it for that. We're gonna keep pushing forward to the next thing, right? This is the Aramaic Targum. This was now this is specifically solely the aspect of it's funny because this is actually what I just pulled up in Lamentations 4, but this is the Aramaic Targum to Lamentations. This is composed roughly around the 5th and 6th century AD, and it's an interpretive translation of the biblical book of Lamentations, just explaining Jerusalem's destruction, so on and so forth, right? So look at how they understand this as well, right? This is rejoice and be of good cheer, Constantinople, city of wicked Edom, which is built in the land of Armenia with crowds from the people of Edom, right? Constantinople is actually where you will find modern day Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, right? A retribution is about to come even unto you, and Parkevi will destroy you, and the accursed cup shall pass to you, and ye shall become drunk and exposed. So again, it's telling you that places like Constantinople, which is in Istanbul, and Armenia, this is Eastern Europe, are directly associated with Edom, and these are white nations, right? Even more specific. Let's scroll down. It says, "After this, your iniquity will be finished, O congregation of Zion." Again, the same thing we brought up, right? And you will be freed by the hands of the king, Messiah, and Elijah, he high priest. And the Lord will no longer exile you. Again, this is their understanding of this. This is not the true understanding, but it's they're doing it to the best of their understanding, right? And at that time, I will punish your iniquities, wicked Rome. So even back then, they understood that Rome would be the last people that are enslaving or oppressing the Israelites. Built in Italy and filled with crowds of Edomites. So it's telling you that Italy is filled with Edomites. And the Persians will come and oppress you and destroy you because your sins have been made known before the Lord. So what do we see again in our second example? We see that the Edomites have been or have easily been tied to the so-called white man. And mind you, this is before so much wickedness that the white man has done to so that everybody is calling him Esau or the devil. This is before. So this is before This is the 5th century AD. This is before slavery. This is before extreme colonization. This is before dropping a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? This is before all that. But let's keep going, right? Again, the people of Constantinople were predominantly Greek-speaking Christians who identified as Romans during the Byzantine era, right? So 330 AD to 1453 AD, right? And again, that 1,000-year period that we talked about, that I've talked about multiple times, that 1,000-year period of when Esau would be asleep. But back to the next one, right? Now this is the chronology of ancient nations, an English version of the Arabic text. I'm not going to read that, but it's vestiges of the past, right? So, real quick, the chronology of ancient nations, right? This was originally written by Al-Biruni in roughly around like 1,000 AD, right? But it was republicated, translated in 1879 or around the 1890s by I forgot who, but pretty much it was just it was translated. But again, it was published in around the 10th century. All right. So let's get to the point. Now this pretty much is about ancient calendars, chronologies, religions, and civilizations. So again, not for the sole purpose of proving that the Israelites are right. Now we're gonna start right here. This is page 48 of Al-Biruni. It says, I have enlarged this subject only in order to show how partial people are to those who they like and how hostile towards those whom they hate, so that frequently their exaggeration in either direction leads to discovery of their infamous design. Okay. That Alexander was the son of Philip is a fact too evident to be concealed. His pedigree is stated by the most celebrated genealogists in this way, right? So this is when we get to the genealogy of Alexander, the son of Philip. We have Alexander the Great, and we have Philip. This is Philip, right? And this is how genealogy starts. Philip, Hermes, Mitan, Rome, Yanaan, Japheth, Vrumaya, Byzantium, Theophil, Rome, Eliphaz, Esau, Isaac, Abraham. So as we see, they are associated with the Edomites. So it's telling you now again, whether this is correct or not, this was the understanding in the 10th century AD, that the people of Edom or the people of Greece go all the way back to the people of Esau, specifically through Eliphaz, through Esau, then Isaac, then Abraham. So this is something that this repeats itself. This is something that's repetitive. There's a pattern here. Esau isn't just being called the white man by too many different groups of people. I've brought a source from the Targum, which is a source from people who consider themselves to be Jews. I have one from a man who would call himself a white European, in Edwin Johnson, and here's another one that was written by Arabs, all before a black or Hispanic brother or sister have made the claim that the white man would be Esau, right? So this is something to keep in mind. But we're gonna scroll down to page, bear with me, page 104. That's 85. Okay, page 100. Never mind. Okay. 101, 102, 103. Let me see. Make sure, is it more on this one? Conquered after the temple. Ptolemy's Philadelphia. Greeks also called. All right, here we go. Page 104, right? Al-Biruni, again. All right, it says, name of the Roman kings. The Caesars who resided in Rome, they are the Banu al-Asfar, the descendants of Sepho, ben Eliphaz, ben Esau, ben Isaac, ben Abraham. Again, it's telling you that the Roman kings, the Roman Caesars, are the descendants of Esau, Isaac, and Abraham. Whether they're correct or not, we see that this was the viewpoint for a long span of time. This was I grabbed source from the 5th century AD. We're spanning from the 5th century AD. We've went to the 19th century, to the 19th century. We went to the 10th century, all to prove who Esau is. Right? Now, of course, back where we were on page 49, right? With calling, I jumped right there, but we're calling the descendants of Philip, descendants of the descendants of Esau, Philip and Alexander. But if you just look, we see that this isn't something that's just seen one time. It's not just one little fluke, because we see in the scriptures that Esau, actually, according to the actual Bible, Esau his descendants line up with being with the Macedonians and with Alexander the Great, right? So let's go real quick to Genesis 36, right? Genesis 36 and 12, it says, and Timnah was concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. These were the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. Okay, we see Eliphaz is here, the son of Esau, right? Eliphaz gives birth to was concubine of Eliphaz, his son, and she bare Eliphaz, and as well as Amalek, right? So whether or not this goes exactly how they see it, we see that this is how it goes according to the scriptures. So Esau has a son, Eliphaz, the son of Adah, the wife of Esau, moved forward, and the sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. And these were the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. So we see that Amalek comes from Eliphaz, right? So we see Esau, then Eliphaz, right? Let's keep going. Let's jump to Numbers real quick, because I want to make this point real quick. This is Numbers chapter 24 and verse 20, and it says, and when he looked on Amalek, he took up this parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. So again, the prophecy, now if you understand, this is obviously, this has become a law now that Edom has to be destroyed. That like Esau has to be. Biblically, it's prophesied that Esau must be So like, bear with me. That Esau has to be destroyed for everything that they did to the children of Israel, right? Bear with me, and I'm gonna grab it because it's an actual law according to the scriptures, right? This is Deuteronomy 25 and 17. So we just read in Numbers 24 and 20 on down that Amalek's his latter end is to be that he gets destroyed, right? But let's keep going. This is Deuteronomy 25 and 17, and it says, "Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when ye come forth out of Egypt," right? How he met thee by the way, and smote the hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given rest from all thine enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget it. So we see that Amalek is supposed to be blotted out forever, right? And that's what happened with King Solomon. And that's what happened with King Saul. Saul was supposed to kill off Amalek. What do we see in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 8, where it says, "And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword," right? Remember the name Agag, because Agag was the chief king of the Amalekites during the times of Saul and David. Saul didn't kill him. Now Samuel ended up killing him, but they were supposed to kill all of them. Saul was supposed to kill everything living in the land of Amalek, and he didn't. He didn't kill Agag, and he didn't, and he spared the beasts or the cattle and oxen, right? Jump forward, and again, I'm just doing this for the sake of time. I don't want the video to be too long. This is Esther chapter 3 and verse 10. Remember the name Agag, right? Esther 3 and 10, and it says, "And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy." So again, Haman was a well-known Edomite. He's a descendant of Agag, the Amalekite, right? He's an Agagite, right? As we continue, we obviously see that Haman was extremely evil to the Israelites, as we brought up plenty of times during the time of Esther. Very, very wicked, and the Most High judged him for that. But as we go to editions of Esther, look what it calls him. Bear with me, look what it calls him. Again, Aman. Now, again, the editions of Esther was translated from the Greek. The actual book of Esther, the first 10 and a half chapters were written in what we would call Hebrew, right? So this is editions of Esther 7 and verse 10, and it says, "For Aman, a Macedonian, the son of Amminadab, the same person, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood," meaning he was not Persian, "and far distant from our goodness, and as a stranger received of us," right? So what does it call Haman? It calls Haman a Macedonian. You know what a Macedonian is? It's a Greek. It's what we know today as the Greeks, right? And in previous videos, I showed you that the Macedonians were actually separate from the Greeks. That's really where Esau comes from. The Macedonians, not a real Greek. The real Greeks were darkly complected people. But it calls Haman, the Amalekite, a Macedonian. It called the Amalekite a Greek, right? Now, when we go to scriptures like 1 Maccabees 1 and 1, and we see stuff like this, and it happened after that, Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian. So look, full circle moment. We see Alexander and his father Philip are descendants of Esau, are descendants of the Edomites, and it says it in this book, but it also says it in the scriptures. It calls them the Macedonians as it calls Amalek. Is that a coincidence? Absolutely not, right? Again, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, kings of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. So what do we see, everybody? We see that according to the scriptures, Esau 100% fits it. But we have one more, right? Now this is bear with me, Salakia. Now this is the next thing we got up. Let me see. This is the discourse of purity and transcultural perspective. Really, we're just going to be focusing more on one part where it speaks on Joseph ben Nathan official. This is written in the 13th century, so around 1200s, and this is just responding to the Christian theological attacks during medieval Europe, right? The reason why I actually found this is there was a brother that spoke on that was showing, pretty much how there were, darkly complected Jews in Europe at this point in time, and that's how I got in to be able to find this book. But we're gonna read through it as quick as possible. I don't want this video to be too long, so we'll start quick. It says medieval Jews, it's page 63. It says medieval Jews were ever mindful of their neighbors' tendency to emphasize that their appearance was markedly different from their surroundings. Jews were depicted in both medieval art and rhetoric as alien, being dark-skinned, as opposed to the fair-skinned blonde Gentiles. All right, the fair-skinned blonde Gentiles. The Jews were known as dark-skinned throughout medieval Europe. They were known as black, and we'll get into that when the time comes to show that there were dark-skinned Jews all throughout Europe that identified as Jews, right? Oddly enough, when Jews commented on these descriptions, they at times accepted the claim, yet by using the rhetoric of material purity, they turned it on its head. One fine example of this can be found in the 13th century polemic manual, the Book of Nizahan Vedas. The second section of the book contains a general critique of the Gospels and an attack on common Christian beliefs, customs, and alongside some of the Earth's insights on pressing contemporary polemic matters from the Jewish Franco-German sphere. It is in this section that the author chose to write the following. Now, again, I don't agree with everything this individual talks about, but just listen. Heretics equals the Christians ask. So the Christians ask, why are most Gentiles fair-skinned and handsome, while most Jews are dark and ugly? So in the 13th century, it was understood that it was viewed by the European world at that time that the Jews were dark-skinned. They thought they were ugly, but nonetheless, they were dark-skinned. Answer them this, that is similar to a fruit. When it begins to grow, it is white, but when it ripens, it becomes black, as is the case with sloes and plums. On the other hand, any fruit which is red at the beginning becomes lighter as it ripens, as is the case with apples and apricots. This then is a testimony that the Jews are pure of menstrual blood. Right now, again, I do not agree with what they go on to say about this. So that there is no initial redness. Gentiles, however, are not careful about menstruation. Thus, there is redness at the outset, and as the fruit that it comes out, i.e., the children are light. So it's pretty much saying that due to menstrual purity laws in the Israelite faith, they don't become red because they don't engage in that blood matter in intercourse, right? But the Gentiles do because they're heathen, and that's why they come out light. This is his logic, not mine. The Jewish anonymous polemist first supplies a natural explanation for the Jewish dark skin. It is a testimony that to the fact that the Jews resemble riper fruit, but apparently uneasy or partially or only partially satisfied with the natural explanation. The polemist supplies the reader with another justification for the Jewish appearance. Rather than repudiating the Christian allegations that the Jews are ugly and dark, the author embraces the claim and uses it as proof of the fact that the observance of material purity and the laws of Nida is the reason why Jews are pure and thus rightful, right? A similar articulation appears in another polemic manual by the 13th century northern French polemist Joseph ben Nathan, official, who countered comparable accusations with rationalizations. Listen to what he says. It says, "We are from white, pure semen. That is why our faces are black. But you," which is the Christians he's talking about. Again, remember what we talked about the Christians. Remember what the viewpoint was of the Christians, right? "But you, the Christians, are from red semen, from menstruant women, and that is why you have a reddish yellow complexion." It goes to show that, look, again, the people he's talking to are the Christians, which we saw are the Gentiles, which it said earlier are white, right? So these are the white Christian Gentiles he's talking to. And he's a dark-skinned Jew. And it says, Joseph Official is indeed admitting to the difference in the Jewish complexion, but at the same time, he strikes a blow at his Christian interlocutors by picking up on the red color, usually associated with vitality. Joseph uses a double-edged literary blade. He associates the red with the blood of menstruation, possibly alluding also to the Jewish claim that Jesus was the son of a menstruant. Again, not really, going too much into that. While indicating the Christian woman did not observe the strict laws of Nida. So pretty much saying that the Christians, again, the white Christians that they're arguing with, they do not observe the laws. As if they were not enough, he invokes the reddish color commonly associated in Jewish parlance with Edom. So just think about this. He invokes the reddish color commonly associated in Jewish parlance with Edom, in the Hebrew literary meaning reddish, also the name of the biblical Esau's son. Right? Within Jewish circles, this term was used to refer to Rome, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Christian Church, by associating the red color with Christians as well as with Edom. Official was also inferring that the Christians are the offspring of the unchosen son of Isaac, Esau, and his son Edom. So what did he say? He said that the Christians that were making fun of him for being dark skinned, that they have a reddish yellow hue. And he's associating their red color to the color of Edom. So why is this important? Because he's saying that they look like how they look because they're descendants of Edom. Why is this so crazy? Because in the book of Genesis, chapter 25 and 25, and I'm not going to grab it because we're going to end soon, but in Genesis chapter 25 and 25, it tells you that Esau was red all over like an hairy garment. And most people say, oh no, he was just ruddy. He wasn't red. He was this and that. King David, this and that, right? But one, that's not the case, because in Esau he's described as ram skin dyed red. So he's described as a scarlet color type of red, right? In many cases, specifically in King David's case, you can translate that word for ruddy for brown, and there's many translations where it uses the word brown. But in this case, we see that he's associating the color of the white Christians, the red with the red a yellowish hue. He's associating that color to them being descendants of Esau. And again, this is from the 13th century, which is the 1200s AD. But that's pretty much it on the video, man. Lord willing, this edifying video through the Spirit. Did not want it to be this long, but Lord willing, you find something interesting in this video. And with that, I'd like to bid everybody a strong shalom. Kwame Shalom.